Welcome to Job Sharing and Beyond, the Future of Work podcast that goes beyond the traditional 9 to 5. I am Karen Tischler, speaker, consultant, and host of the show, where we hear from global experts every other week to discover innovative solutions and tips on how to remain a relevant employer in the future. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to our show. We now have an audience from 27 countries, with our latest listener joining us from Pakistan. If you're new to our podcast, here's a quick overview. We are currently in year 1, and the 4 main topics that my guests talk about are flexible work, fathers and care, support for professionals returning to paid work, and transferable skills from unpaid care work. Today's guest will focus in particular on parental leave in Denmark and work and life balance. If you are interested in this topic, please check out our previous episodes that are dedicated to this aspect of gender equality. I will also add them in the show notes. We are coming to an end of year 1 of the podcast in late February, early March. The Job Sharing and Beyond show will start again with its 2nd year in late March. Follow us on Emily's Past Consulting EPC newsletter to keep up to date on the latest news, and also read an additional Q&A interview, updates on previous podcast guests, sneak previews on future guests, and interesting research findings. You can find the subscription link in the show notes, or you can head over to our website at emilyspast.ca, which is emilyspah.ca. And now I'm very appreciative to introduce our guest for today, Lisbeth Odgaard Madsen. Lisbeth is the founder and CEO of Potential Company, focusing particularly on the talent pipeline consequences because of the mental rift between family and ambition for men and women. Potential Company expands the opportunity for gender diversity at all levels of the talent pipeline. Lisbeth is the author of the book Mother with Ambition, written in Danish. She has been advisor and speaker of various areas of diversity and talent retention. And now, without further ado, let's start our conversation with Lisbeth, who is the guest from our 10th country around the world. Welcome to the show, Lisbeth.
Thank you very much.
It is really nice to have you on the show today, and we might even have an additional visitor on our show.
Exactly. Yes, I brought along my 6-week-old baby Vika, who's here as well. So if you hear baby noises along the way, then that's the reason.
That's my youngest so far visitor onto the show.
Well, I thought it was on topic, so it was a great way of of getting her into the topic as well.
I completely agree. Thank you for bringing her along. We have a lot of listeners from all over the world. So could you share, so they know where you are calling in from, if there is a particular site or food that they should be checking out when they visit your area?
Well, yes. Well, I'm from Denmark. I live in Copenhagen in Denmark, which is a small country in Northern Europe, if anyone wonders. Well, the site that everyone talks about, all tourists come to see, is the Little Mermaid. That's just a couple of kilometers away from where I'm at right now. I would say another main site for me would be all the great restaurants we have here, because we're doing pretty well in the restaurant scene. So, for example, the world's number 1 restaurant, Noma, is placed here in Copenhagen, and it's a great place to go and check out. And so that's for sure a place to go and see and check out if people want to see something else than the Little Mermaid.
Thank you so much. That sounds really tasty.
It is indeed.
So now, Lisbeth, you are the CEO and founder of the Potential Company. Can you share with our listeners why you created your company?
Yes, well, it actually started when I had my first child. So I have three daughters by now. Well, the youngest is 6 weeks, but my eldest is almost 8 years old. And when I gave birth to her, I realized all the issues there are with unleashing the potential of well, generally female talent in general, and especially because of the fact that we have babies and women give birth to the babies, whereas the men don't, and that creates a lot of challenges to gender diversity, and also to how we divide our time between work and family spheres among the genders. So that is the reason why I decided to venture into that area and create solutions for companies and for the society at large to actually help it will loosen up that big Gordic knot that this whole work and family spheres problem is.
I'm very appreciative that you started this, because it's been really fascinating to research about all the work you have done. And
thank you.
you're very welcome. Now, can you walk us through the details of the Balanced Talent Pipeline program that you have created?
Well, it started out as well, one of the first things that I actually created when I came up with the company. And it was actually created because I realized that most of the talent drain that happens in companies, it doesn't happen when people are in top management. It actually happens a lot further down the line. And the talent pipeline drains out women, especially when they're in their 30s while they're having children. So in creating this program, we're actually trying to help companies will retain their talent while it's still talent and it's not in leadership or like in top management, to make sure that they actually make it all the way up to the higher levels in the company, and prevent talent drain, you could say.
And do you have any particular example of, how you have implemented this in an organization?
Well, we've actually ended up working, well, for example, particularly with parental leave. That's quite an issue here in Denmark, because it happens that in Denmark you get a very long parental leave, or mainly maternity leave, actually. Sorry. And so we have implemented programs in, for example, well, Lego, for example, where we've helped the company get this whole idea of how do we manage the parental leave, so that we actually make sure that the women don't leave, and help them both, tend to the fathers and the mothers to actually make sure that they stay in the company for a longer time.
And so with that, you have created something which I found so interesting. It's called the Keep in Touch Conversations. And
Yes.
Can you share with our listeners a bit more about what exactly that is?
Yes, that is like a very concrete, keep in touch program, you could say, when it comes to parental leave. And it is actually a program where we set up 6 conversations during the time from when a person first realizes that he or she is actually expecting a child, and then till they come back from parental leave and they're well into their time of parenthood, you could say. Because as I said before, that's the time, at least here in Denmark, but also in other countries, that's really a problem. So we make sure that companies and their employees that are expecting actually stay in touch along the way, all the way from when they first discover their pregnancy and until they come back. And it's not rocket science, really. It's a matter of getting them to maintain their discussion well, from right from the offset, and then to maintain their contact all the way through parental leave, and have agendas to actually say what is it that we're going to discuss during these times, to make sure that they get all around, both the practical issues of being on leave and not being working, and also the emotional issues of becoming a parent.
I really think this is so important, and I hope that people listening to this all over the world think about that and might implement that also in their respective organizations, because I feel
Yeah.
often the identity, especially of a
Mm-hmm.
mother, but also if it's a dad who takes a longer time of paternal leave, it
Mm-hmm.
so easily switched over to being quote unquote only a mom or only a
Mm-hmm.
dad, and the whole professional sort of identity just vanishes. And I think that creates then often more of a reduction of self-confidence from a
Yes.
professional perspective.
Yes, and actually, what we experience quite often is that the very second or the time that people are away, they exactly experience that they're actually they feel like less of an asset to their employer,
Mm-hmm.
and they actually I've talked with people that have said. So I'm returning to my work now, but I don't know if I'm going to be as good an employee as I was prior to my leave time. And quite often what happens is actually that you become an even better employee, because you all of a sudden you have to manage or you will manage projects in a new way, because becoming a parent actually is one big education in project management and stress enhancement.
Exactly.
And so for that reason, it's actually you become a way better employee, but you don't really realize that when you're in it. And then you come back and think that you should actually get a lower salary instead of a higher salary for what you've learned during your time away.
Right. So I think that is just such an important thing, because it really helps the respective mom or dad to realize what a valuable asset they are
Yes.
to the company, and
Mm-hmm.
that the skills that they are learning are helpful and can be
Yeah.
transferred. And I think that's, if I, from a global perspective, I feel there is still a lot of opportunity to, grow in that, to see
Mm-hmm.
that transferability of
Yes,
skills.
for sure. And those skills are just it doesn't matter if you're a mom or dad, they are there for sure in each and every parent that are out there. So that is pretty much, I guess that's the gist of that program. But it's also about, just making sure that if the employer actually just stays away and stays out of touch with their employee during the time when they're away, then that employer will be like at the furthest back of the employee's mind. And then the second they start thinking, everything's out up in the air when you create a family, and the everything falls that when everything falls down into place, then the employer will be at the back of your priority list. So if you want to actually move up that priority list of the employee, then you'll have to be, present in their minds all the way along the time when they're actually away from work. So that's also the reason for the employer to actually want to do this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think it's a win-win for both parties. So I
Exactly.
think that's excellent, excellent. So now you also wrote a book, and I don't speak Danish, so the
No,
translation would be
but you'll have to
mother
learn
with
that soon.
mother with ambition. And
Hmm.
I would love to see that book in English. Yeah, but so to be very honest, I from a summary of the book, I put it into
Hmm.
Google Translate to get a little bit of an
Yes.
overview in English. But you tell our listeners a summary of the book, please, and why
Yes.
you wrote it.
Yes, well, I actually wrote the book. That was the start of my journey. The reason why I created the company.
Mhm.
I wrote the book after giving birth and having all those experiences with becoming a mother myself. And what happened to myself was actually that I became a mom, and then I thought I was going to come back to work and do the same thing. And then along the way, I realized that so much had happened, and my current employer was a like a genuine misfit to me. So I ended up quitting my job and writing that book instead, about what is it that actually happens, and why is it that lots of especially women, mothers with ambition, firstly, they don't necessarily thrive while they're on maternity leave, And secondly, when they come back, they realize that that the job isn't the right one for them. So what was that whole process, and why is it that we're struggling, especially the mothers are struggling so much with this whole process, and what can we learn from that? So it's a book that actually gives mothers an idea of why is it that they're struggling if they are, and also gives their employers an idea of why is it that it may be difficult to actually retain those mothers with ambition at a long term in the company or in the workplace. But to me, it was actually my own personal self-therapeutic project while I was writing to figure out what was actually happening inside myself, and then I ended up out sending out my thoughts to everyone else, for everyone else to read as well.
I truly think it sounds like that should be a book that somebody who is pregnant and is, as you said, very ambitious should be reading, just to get a perspective already, because I think it's so hard before you have children to really imagine what it's going to be like.
Yes,
and
yes, exactly.
to balance the work and life. I think theoretically one can imagine it, but it's just
it's a whirlwind that just comes and knocks you over. Well, when especially with the first child, you don't know what hit you, and then you have to make a meaning of all that. So that was actually the whole that was what happened to me. So then I just wrote it down, and then out came that book.
Well, thank you. So now, as we are talking about it, I strongly believe that flexible working is really one of the solutions to all of this. And I feel, therefore, it is an important part of a diverse workforce, because it really allows people who may otherwise not be able to return to the paid workforce to participate. So now I'm curious, what are best practice examples of flexible working in Denmark? And also with COVID, how have things changed?
In general, on a you could say on a worldwide scale, I guess Denmark has always, or at least over the last decades, has been doing really well in this whole flexibility thing, and also most Danes actually leave work around 5 o'clock or even before that, and that's the end of their workday. So we're actually we have a lot of time for what, compared to other countries, for what you would call balancing work and family lives. So in that matter, you could say that Denmark is actually a best practice example in its own respect, because we're doing pretty well in that. But what is then the issue is that most in Denmark you can't really run a workplace if you don't offer those conditions to your employees. The thing is, then sometimes that flexibility is kind of it's on paper, but it's not really then really happening when you are actually out there working for that company. But what has happened and then there's also the matter of flexibility also with where you're working from, if you're working from home or if you're working from the office. And there also, I think a lot of companies have offered a lot of flexibility on paper, but then when it came to living it out, it hasn't been as rosy as you'd think.
Right.
But then came Corona, or the COVID crisis, and we had our first and only, so far, let's hope it stays that way, lockdown was from March through May pretty much. And that meant that everyone was sent home and everyone had to work from home until the summer holidays pretty much, which were in June. And that meant that everyone had to do that, both men and women. What happened before the COVID crisis was that with all the flexibility measures that were there, they were there on paper for everyone, but it was mainly the female workers or the female employees that actually made use of it, which meant that it actually became a diversity break instead of a diversity lever, because it would mean that a lot of women made use of it and were less reliable as an employee, because they would leave work early or would work from home or whatever, and and lots of men would be going to the office every day and having a lot more FaceTime with the boss or whatever. So it would be a break for diversity instead of a lever. Then came COVID, and then all of a sudden everyone was sent home, men and women.
Right.
And actually there has been a few pieces of research here that actually shows that that means that or lots of men have actually realized how nice it is to work from home, and how nice it is to actually see more of your kids and hang out with them more and go for walks or whatever they've spent their time doing during the lockdown. And that means that more men are wanting this whole flexibility, those flexibility measures now than prior to the COVID crisis, which means that it can actually, if used in the right way, this whole new situation can actually become a diversity lever in the future, because now all of a sudden it's not only the men that are actually, or the women that actually are asking for these measures, but men are also starting to do it. What then has happened is that some women have actually experienced this to be such a nice thing that even more women have decided to quit their jobs completely and be stay-at-home moms for a while, because they thought it's just been great to be around the kids all the time. So yeah, the jury is still out. We'll see how it pans out. But I'm still crossing my fingers that it will mainly be a diversity lever, this whole COVID thing, because more. You say the men are getting to the level where the women were before the COVID crisis.
One of the things I think, or at least I'm hoping to, is that people, or especially like male senior leaders, are realizing how much extra work unpaid care work really is.
That too,
and,
yeah.
and also what skills one can learn from it, because as you had said earlier, the time management, the flexibility, the project management, all of this was all of a sudden for everybody to see at home. And maybe some of these leaders might have not experienced that ever before.
Sure.
So,
and it has also, I think that doesn't only go for Denmark. It's like a thing people worldwide have experienced from this lockdown crisis. All of a sudden, the family sphere has been open for everyone to see in a work environment, because you've been doing Zoom meetings or team meetings or whatever the platform was, and you've been seeing like the kids crawling around on top of your head while you've been in meetings or whatever they've been doing, or screaming in the corner or whatever. So it's like it's been like that for everyone pretty much. So it hasn't only been for the women to showcase that side of their life. So that's a really like a good thing that's come out of this crisis, I'd say, on the flexibility side. At least one good thing.
Yeah, I fully agree, because North America as a whole, I still think, is way behind flexible work arrangements. And because especially in the US, but also in Canada, so many women in particular had to quit because it was impossible to do homeschooling, unpaid care work on top of a full-time job. I truly hope that will shift the attitude towards more flexible work in North America as well.
Well, let's hope so. And I think it's a long journey, but they say a crisis puts all tendencies that are already there on speed, and I think this is one tendency that's really been sped up by this crisis. So let's hope that it continues going in that direction.
I really hope so. And also, talking to you and sharing more of best practice examples that already exist around the world, so people don't have to reinvent the wheel. While I was doing research about you, what I really loved was your hashtag stoptalentwaste.
The reason why I created that hashtag was exactly that. If you just let all those women leave the workforce, or don't make use of their professional talents just because they might get pregnant in a year or two, so we don't want to engage investing in them, then that's really a talent waste. And then you actually waste or miss out on 50% of the world's population, which is, to me, seems like a serious waste. what is happening there is that this is still happening, and I don't think we have made like the final solution to that, or found a final solution to that yet. But what is happening is that people are, for example, turning towards parental leave and turning towards the whole family thing now, and realizing that it is an issue that has immense impact on how we see gender diversity and how we see talent extraction, if you can call it that, in general. So I think merely from getting putting focus in the right direction, that works really well. But other than that, I think we still have a lot of work to do. In general, you can actually see that from Danish numbers, there is a piece of research that actually shows that with regards to gender equality in general, then everything that has to do with gender bias and choice of educational direction for genders, actually some of the things that have been a problem for many years have actually or are being eliminated as we speak, and it's gotten a lot better in the last 10 or 20 years. But when it comes to families in general, then it's all the same as it has always been, that it's mainly the women that take care of the families, not the men, unfortunately. In like broadly speaking, right? But that still hasn't changed. It's been the same for the last 50 years, which is quite astonishing, because we're tending to say that we are some of the most gender equal places in the world, but when it comes to that, we're just as bad as any other country, and so there's still a lot to do.
Very few societies have figured out a very good way to re-enter these professionals.
Yes.
And I think, I've talked to young professionals here in Canada who were actually concerned about having a child because they were worried how this would impact their career. And so I know in the US, in the UK, and in Germany, there are internships and other methods to try and help professionals return. And so I'm curious, is there something in particular in Denmark where somebody who might have been an unpaid care worker for 5, 10, 15 years, how do they return back to paid work?
Well, the thing with Denmark is that there hasn't been a lot of people that actually have, historically, there hasn't been a lot of people that have been out of the workforce for that long, because then they're doomed forever, pretty much. That's the gist of. But we have the women in Denmark are some of the most, how do you say that in English? People stay in the workforce even when they have kids, but they just don't advance as much to such higher degree. So there is I think many countries actually have more return to work programs than in Denmark, because the only time away from work that we have in Denmark is actually maternity leave, and then we come back. But some of the things that are happening now is exactly that. More and more people are actually withdrawing completely from the workforce for a few years, because they want to stay at home with their kids, and that's a new thing in Denmark. But the thing is that's the same all over the world. Everyone thinks that a career curve starts at the bottom and then goes directly at a steep line all the way to the top, and that you don't have ups and downs in your career. You have to show one progressive move from the bottom to the top, and that's not, especially with women, that's not the way their their life works, because then you have a kid, and then you have 2 kids, and then you have some years where you may need to have other needs than working in a steep line to create a career. And that whole bouncing career curve, no one actually has ever thought of how to attend to that. And that's actually what people are realizing here in Denmark, that maybe we should do something to cater for people that have a career curve like that, that's not going steep from the bottom to the top. And I think that's pretty much the same issue that everyone else has. And because then in Denmark, the thing is, then you can actually maintain your connection with the workforce, or with still being part of the workforce, while still having a bouncing career curve. That's more the thing that we're actually looking at than having return to work programs, because that's just not. There's quite few people that actually leave the workforce for a number of years still in Denmark. But actually, what I've been suggesting to some companies has actually been to try and look at, like, if you want to create talent, then you try and nurture them while they're in their 20s, and then you make a graduate program for people that come out of business school or whatever. And then hopefully they will become that's a talent program, and they will be stay in the company for long enough to actually to have those skills developed further, and then they'll make it to the top at some stage. But why not actually create a talent program or a different kind of graduate program to people in their 40s when they're back in the workforce, or when they're back at full speed at least, because it's more a matter of being back at full speed than actually being back in the workforce in Denmark. And most companies haven't really thought about that, because it's like when you're in your 40s, if you haven't made it to top management, then your career will be doomed forever, and that it shouldn't be like that. So that's actually, but it's a complete change of mindset that you actually have to go into to actually to do that. So that's something that people are still looking at. But the funny thing is that when you talk about why is it that women don't make it to the top, everyone's talking about we need to make a change in culture, changing the way we view women. But the thing is that people are still viewing women as wanting to do career in the same way as the old traditional steep from the bottom to the top curve. And as long as they do that, they will not create that career, that cultural change, because that will require, for example, to make a graduate program for people above the age of 40. So it's still a long journey that people are going on to actually realize what has to be done to actually get moving.
And Lisbeth, this is so interesting that you're saying this, because I was very recently reading the book Range by David Epstein.
Yes.
And basically in his book, he pretty much sort of says that, it is typically perceived to be, you're maybe if you're a lawyer or a surgeon, or, that it's a very linear path, but that many professions, it actually benefits from having a more diverse or circular, or
or spiraling, or whatever you call it. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Because it allows people to be more innovative, because they are able to use different parts of experiences and things they've learned. And so, and one example, interestingly enough, in the book is this, she's the former CEO of the Girl Scouts in the US, Frances Hesselbein, and she did not start a paid career until she was in her 50s.
No, exactly.
And so what happened was, she basically started, she had an 8-year-old son, and was asked to temporarily take over like a Girl Scout group for, I think it was 6 weeks or something. And so she said, okay. She stayed with them for, I believe it was 8 years. And so gradually, she did an enormous amount of volunteer work, which taught her a lot of leadership skills.
Exactly.
And so eventually she was asked to become the CEO. And, so when you think about it, if you told somebody, this person who is now, being viewed as one of the biggest leadership examples, and she's now in her, like, how do you say this, in her 100, she's above the age of 100 now, and and so it's just so fascinating what she has accomplished, and like the range of experience she had, and how this all was serving her to start her paid career in the 50s. So yeah, so I feel if we can see parenthood, whether somebody stays at home for a year or 10 or 15, just as a stepping stone in the spiral career.
And that's actually the reason why we're actually, we suggest here in Denmark that people should put their time on parental leave on their CVs.
Exactly.
Because it's actually quite it can become an upgrading experience for many people. and it's not being regarded currently as something that's actually an upgrade. It's rather a bump well, at its best, a bump on the road, which is silly because it's so much more than that.
And that, honestly, this is my dream, that one day somebody who is looking for new employees, they look at it, whether it's a resume or on LinkedIn, and they see, and it simply says dad or mom, something like this. And let's say it says 2 or 3 years or however long. And then somebody looks at it and says, oh, yeah, wow, that is somebody who is very flexible, time focused, is good at project management. And then they look, at the other experiences that person has had, and not, and to your point, and see it as just a normal thing. So I think I strongly believe we get there if we have more people around the world like you, and to share all the things you have already done. So I'm so appreciative that our listeners could be hearing all the initiatives you have done. And
thank you.
You're very welcome. And Lisbeth, I could talk with you forever, but our time is coming to an end. And so I just wanted to make sure, is there anything else that we haven't talked about today that you would like to share with our listeners?
No, well, I just think it's quite important that people realize that, if, as I said before, a career curve doesn't have to be steep, linear from the bottom to the top. There are many other ways to do it, and it's important that both people that are employees and people that are managers or employers actually realize that, because until we actually realize that, all of us, that there are so many other ways to create a career, then I don't think there will be a lot of diversity in management, because then it's going to be the same kinds of people that will be opt through the systems, because then there's only going to be one narrative of how a leader's CV should look, and we are missing out big time on, as you say, on innovation and on diversity and on, well, pretty much on potential, both talent and profit margins when we're not looking at it that way. So I guess that's my main point in this whole discussion.
Thank you so much. Now, Lisbeth, how can people find you?
Well, I have a website, obviously, that's called potentialco.dk. So no dots between potential and CEO, just straightforward. And then people are very welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn, and feel free to drop me a note that they've heard about me or heard our talk here, because then I know where that connect is coming from. And if anyone wants to hear more or wants to be in touch, then I can be reached on my email address, which is LOM Lisbeth Odgaard Madsen at potentialco.dk. So those are the ways to get in touch with me.
Thank you so much, Lisbeth. It was such a pleasure having you on the show today.
Well, it was a great pleasure to be on the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to the show. We hope you gained valuable insights and new ideas. To keep listening to future episodes, please head over to iTunes or your favorite player and subscribe and give it a rating. We would very much appreciate a review and for you to share it on social media, so more people can start innovating in how they offer employment. Until the next time, goodbye!